Good
morning, everyone. Welcome from around the world. We're so happy you can join us. We will start with the yellow prayer book on page 1 for the opening prayers. We'll do them all in English. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to Bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to Bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to Bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to Bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. I take refuge in the Buddhas until I attain the essence of awakening. Likewise, I take refuge in the Dharma and in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. Just as the Buddhas of the past gave rise to Bodhicitta and progressed along the Bodhisattva's path, so shall I give rise to Bodhicitta for the benefit of all beings and practice the stages of the Bodhisattva's path. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. Until awakening, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, limitless as space, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they not be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents, the wealth of infinite oceans of realms. If I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping. completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial. The supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood. Om Guru Deva Dakini Ratna Mandala Prakticha Soha. Namo to the Guru, the utter purity of all appearance and existence. I offer all appearance and existence arisen as the primordial ground. I supplicate you, may the three realms be completely liberated. Please grant blessings to empty samsara from its depths. Lord, with five omniscient wisdoms, crown ornament, kind one with loving nature, precious protector of all beings, heart of all Buddhas, inexpressible by words or thoughts, I supplicate you from the core of my mind. Bless me from within the state of Dharmata. Bless me to realize this mind, primordially pure and unborn as unfathomable Dharmakaya. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
Sabatala the Shankatamba Yotin, Gendula Lo, Doja Baba Mela Jagambo, Pamotuba Java Tomba, Kajulama Lazo, the woman chicken, Japan, the Sonsaja Jango, and Central Gango, Deva. Sabe Lama Javlazo, the Sasan Damajala, Chuchin, Yatomi Mojo, Gila so. Simjito Dana Gila Taba Chujan, then to draw the Balataka, the Katan the Ramji. Number source and more don't want you to talk. Penny, see, I'm good. You took the charge. Some sorry. The real Santos.
Ready?
Jerva. Oh, yeah, turn pata, I'm not doing that. Yeah. The same go around, you took the theatre Charles Sumatena, the Yamina Kong, not just on the show. Yamatan, you did not to Thomas chair, God, not to chair, you make a fountain at the Zota Da, Tetamchila, Magi Jajan, the Chitamilana, Chat on glory, the Yam, the Child, so. Inang kapteni tiniang gom ja tele dang salmo dang tiniang onang ji yo de yore de o ta de nyam de di sem de nyam de zba do ma do tak che tang jin nam to ke tak che tang yo de yore tak che ma dang de gom ja sem zba me ba ra ji sem ne wo ka ne they woke up till the Ramji to Charlie. You know,
so, Dharma friends, we continue today where we left off yesterday, which was in English on page 6, where it said, although their forms appear individually, you realize their empty essence. Later, things will appear in this way naturally without needing to deliberately mingle mind with appearance. So when one meditates, so when one rests in a state of meditation, naturally then ordinary thoughts cease. And you're not thinking about sights and sounds and so forth. So therefore, whatever arises is you let it be as it is, and then it becomes almost like there's nothing really there. That's the experience that arises here. But then when you're not meditating, then again those things seem to possess a real existence. They're really there. So it has to do with whether or not you are analyzing in the mind. So when you begin to analyze those appearances, then they're actually there. But when you just let them be and you don't analyze and you don't grasp, you meditate, you just abide within that state of meditation, then the experience becomes naturally like this, like everything becomes naturally, like it says here, the empty essence. But then again, when you begin to analyze, then things again seem to truly exist.
Gom Jacob Chipamari, they Joram Tamsil Garce, Yamida Sesivajre, Yamida, Tawe, Tai to Gombe, Angdong, Jube and Tandong, Malari Song Tere. When you go to Juba and Talendong, go your the Lani Sodin and the somebody, the Lani Soto, don't listen to Soto by Dollar Congress, Jesse, Dollar Congress, Julam Jesse, Jarang said in the Julam Tanti, the same Gami, the lead Julam Tanti, Gami, Namton, Zaba, Tra, Kare, Sona, the Chorne, Garden is the Chova and Yan, the Chova and Yan, the Jishi de Lena, Jishi de the Chova and the Dona, the Jishi de Chova and Pamela. 차로 다시 들어오고 저들이 조성아 들이 라지 그들이 저들 조람 감이야 초가 듣고도 대사 초방도 마셔봐 라왕 저 토용을 들이제래 요밤 방미밤 접지 가득 잡아지 된다고 저 라왕 디보를 차용을 뒤 차오는 뒤지가로 다녀자 정지 들이 그네들이 다 뒤지가로 그냥 씨도 새롭게 다르지 Jolam Tamsil Garce to kitchen already.
Then it says, once you have mingled that state of your practice in this way, so this mingling is very important. And the mingling does not only happen here. To mingle the state of practice does not always happen when we just meditate, but actually it has to be also mingled with our day-to-day activities. Milarepa had said that the view must be ascertained, determined. A state of meditation must be sustained, and within the conduct, one has to bring it to maturation or kind of mastery within the conduct. So within the conduct, it has to be practiced. In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says in verse number 36, in brief, wherever you are and whatever you do, always examine the state of your mind, and so forth. So what is important is to mingle the practice of meditation with the daily conduct. And so that means whatever thought or grasping arises in the mind, whether it is subtle or coarse, it generates a feeling. And then together with that feeling, mindfulness arises. And when mindfulness arises together with the feeling, then the feeling disappears. And at that point, you experience liberation. And then naturally, in all your activities, you will not become controlled by the things experienced by the 6 sense consciousnesses. So you will attain autonomy. So it is said, do not abandon what you have and don't try to get what you don't have. So do not engage in acceptance or rejection. And in this way, awareness will attain stability. So what this is speaking of here is that we need to mingle or merge the practice with our daily conduct. That is very important.
해당치 다 도과지 사실은 좀 뭐를 살지 레도니 차당이 아니 레도니 데라 띠네들이 레도니 제가 다 센지 다 나지지 또 차응을 데려 떠먹지 레도니가 차당이 냠도 손에 데려 떠먹송도 떠먹송들이 떠먹대 가리 가리 무고단 심보한테 들이 수준을 저 초초진지 지소리 서로 라왕가 돼 떠먹 따뜻한 레롱을 시켜요. 대회는 이거 뭐 차가진 조랑 탐색하는 무성 대신에 들이 되게 이거 뭐 차마 보정 무생도 저런 무생구나 들이락 받아 내사원 들도 요성 들라 하장 가르쳐들이 송배요 이 시적 간도만 내가 맞지 내가 맞송을 그 삭진 뭐도 답제나 송이 이 시적 간도만 내가 맞샤네 20m 총을 전부 매소양양 요소 매个背매 총총 따뜻한 거 다 말중도 매도 총총 들이디는 버싱 총총 망고 요를 망고 요걸만이 버싱 총총 망고 매도 가리 체험도 그래 버싱 총총도 빼납도 총총 참아 하고 하고를 맞들이 납도 돌 납도라도 기미를 조고서 적신하는 지 용이 초과되지 세물이 초과되고 있다는 남도 라도 기미도 저저저 이도 남도 총총 다지 마도는 산이 키워 줬고 말이 어떻게 작사요면 생포랑 이게 변은 차롬대랑 이게 쇼거를 맞도 차롬만 게 차롬 도자 도니라 차롬 도리 쉬어요 말이 피도가 말 베스트더래 다디 졸람 탐지 가나들 남도 차하는 봐 남도 차와 대인들이 락과 차당이 차와 레도니 와봐 하고는 들이남도 자대 하고를 특히 총기는 대로 특성들이 따다다 유목 족대 남도 유목 독점을 들어오래 독점 뒤쳐지는들이 다 떠먹는다 말에 또 말을 방한테 남도 소도 오래 장이 차당이 소서 강을 찍은 소롱을 소를 짓다 먹래 들이 개발사고 20m 시바도 또 뒤지되래 뒤지게 되니 남도 종종 같이 도트들이 메디체는 도요래 빼들을 이제 조랑 하정 타질 또 같은질래 타질 다 같은질더니 무슨 이렇게 좀 뭐래지
So when it comes to recognizing the thoughts and the afflictive emotions, there are two kinds of afflictive emotions. There is the subtle version of the afflictions, and then there are more coarse counterparts. So normally we recognize the coarse afflictive emotions, but we do not normally recognize their more subtle counterparts. So what are the subtle afflictions? The coarse affliction is desire or attachment, and it begins with a subtle notion of hope. So the subtle counterpart of attachment is hope. So you're hoping to accomplish any activity. And the subtle counterpart to anger or hatred is fear. You're worried that you might not accomplish something. So hope and fear are the subtle counterparts of attachment and hatred. And they arise because self-grasping has become very thick in the mind. And self-grasping is ignorance. And ignorance, when there's ignorance, hope and fear arise together. So what is ignorance? Ignorance is to hold things to be true, to believe that things possess a true existence, and to believe in one's own concept labels in one's mind. And this mind becomes very malleable. Believe in anything. So we are completely controlled. We have no self-control. So this is ignorance, the karmic wind of ignorance that begins to develop into first very subtle afflictive emotions. So these need to be recognized. The important instruction, and this is a very important and special instruction, is that we have to recognize the many subtle afflictive emotions. If you're able to recognize the many subtle afflictions, then it is easy to also tame the more coarse afflictions when they arise. There's one instruction by the wisdom Dakini Niguma in relation to Mahamudra, and she said, the wisdom Dakini Niguma said that the small fire spark of primordial wisdom must be nourished with mindfulness again and again. So here the example is fire. First, it is a small fire. And if you want to increase the fire, you have to add small pieces of wood into it continuously until it grows, until the fire grows. So this means you have to recognize all the subtle thoughts arising in the mind. And in Dzogchen, this is then referred to, when they have become liberated, in Dzogchen, this is referred to the natural liberation of thoughts, or the natural traceless liberation of thought. So thoughts and feelings are liberated and no trace is left behind. So first, if you're not able to liberate and recognize and liberate those subtle thoughts, then there is no way you will be able to liberate the more coarse thoughts when they arise, even if you try. So ice has to be melted slowly, gradually, on its own. So it takes its time to melt. For as long as it's frozen, it's like a rock. And even if you hit it onto something, wanting to melt it right away, it won't melt like that. So it melts the thoughts melt by recognizing the subtle thoughts when they arise, of hope and fear and so on, which are the counterparts of attachment and aversion. So that needs to be recognized. When hope and fear arise, one needs to recognize that these are the subtle counterparts to attachment and aversion. So this is how we tame thoughts, or the 6 afflictive emotions, which are summarized into the 3 poisons, and the 3 poisons then all arise out of ignorance or delusion. And when the mind is ignorant, then we become controlled by anything, positive or negative. So that is due to ignorance. And again, mindfulness is like this fire spark of primordial wisdom. And we have to liberate the subtle thoughts first when they arise. And the more you're able to liberate them, the stronger the fire of mindfulness, of awareness will become. And so for this reason, it is very important to recognize these subtle thoughts in our day-to-day activities.
Keji Yami Tangsi Bede, that you know, you can't know Tangsiang, Tishi Long Madeva, you say much and see Malam Gani, Malam Disney, something Tassan, Malang sa sam thok la sa pa tham te sa kwa de cha na ka tin tin nyami tang si nang khe ka chap sem ji chap sem ji ka chap ki jo ko nyami ji ba te cha to sem ji ka chap nang khe ka chap sem ji chap de na 남가 가까이오면 세든데 셈리데 남가에 가까이오면 말이 제가 당서 남자 좀 가면 남가진 소보들이 요리 마상 이 파스팅 퉁퉁 가고는 또 많은데 봐 남가에 또 가사까지 찹대래 남게 맞춰서 사원이 참아 찹대래 사이게 돼 다다 사도도 있나 사도도 돼오 네 사도도 있어는 이 막또야요 또주 타가지고 또지 그 바스는 남가가 또 많이 이제 반참 유배대 고 또야요 반참 직접 고 또야요 막 베스트 선호당을 남게 다 따랑 찹죠 가게 들이 찹들이 들이 이거 먹은 통야한데라 내가 이거는 제가 저지 느끼지 셈이지 셈 이거는 제가 셈 거들이 좀 차한 거를 배 셈고 별로 먹히는 박차도 그 요새 박차도 봐서 들이 지나만 박차도 참을 뒤 차좀 이제니 다시 하고 성선아 나 그래서 가서 차도 없잖아 까띠 과차 차들이 다 mam당 나도 때지 채우나 시 나와 사도로 요미 직접 마사부 간다 남지가 좀 만나 동성을 매반하게 돼 듣고 요래 제대로들이잖아 배는 강관을 갖다 대 원한 강관을 요래서 맥도 내가 강관 요금이 직접 상고요 말이 뒤에 마서 강관은 딱지 길에서 쪽쪽자 고는구나 당한 거야 고는 강관 특성상 뒤쳐와 지은 거래 다리대로 공원서는 맥도는 강하매 요금이 직접 내가 전이 잘해 대근이 그 속디야 바부 공부를 니들이 또 차대요. 속등이 도도 정말 대라서 와서 강해요나. 강해면 더서 먼저 대라고 차를 대는 거에 딱지만고 딱 먹고. 이 양장에서 대식 또 당도도 차대 양장한테 딱지 딱 싸놓다는. 이 르들이 이제 속콩하라고 그래. 네, 동안이 시바데 상탈이 되더니 녹지에 상탈이 시켜요. 새도 강야 자토고 말해. 말아리 짜자 빠는 쪽으로 쭉쭉 말해서 그래서 뭐들 차대에 다 대리 낭나 쭉야데 쭉사데 쭉이니 말고 동안이 가들 때다 서로 땅 들고왔던 들이 남산 남자 좀 가면 남산 남자 좀 딱 제대로들이 처음에 말로 봐대 더 진짜 요거 제를 돼 들이 남게 같아 당연히 잡도 너가 가까면 다 다른 곡스랑나 잡도 없을 때 고아가 고는 노아가 들이 남이 제법가는 들이 양자들이 처음지가 말이죠 대로 오래 돼
So then it says, and wherever mind pervades, there is Dharma. You will find that wherever space pervades, mind pervades, and wherever mind pervades, there is Dharmakaya. So now we, in terms of the first one, wherever space pervades, mind pervades. Also, in our when we mingle the state with, first of all, when we mingle the state of practice in this way, we do that throughout the day. And then also into the night in the dream state, we continue to carry the state of practice on when we go through the different stages of the dream state, which is referred to as the higher, middling, and lower levels. And in a dream state, then we might gain some recognition of the subtle and the deep sleep luminosity. So in this way, we continue to engage in practice, and then we find that wherever space pervades, mind pervades. So space and mind are not separate. We cannot say here's the mind and here's space. So when you meditate, when you mingle mind with space, it is not that there is some sky high up there in the sky, that's where the space is, but actually the space is everywhere. Everywhere where there is emptiness, empty space, there is space. It's all pervasive. Even it pervades into the ground. It's everywhere. So, for example, if you have a piece of a piece of earth, and you have this solid thing, this ball of earth. So you think it is a ball of earth, but then it can be scattered and just turn into dust. And the reason it can be scattered is because of empty space. If there wouldn't be any empty space, there would be no room, no space to scatter the earth. So right here you can scatter it because there's empty space right here. So empty space pervades everywhere. So this is how we first reflect. And then it is the grasping, those thoughts, that things possess any true concrete existence, that defile the mind. Or it is like your glasses become foggy, so obscured by imprints. So due to various conditions that arise, these imprints then obscure the mind. So actually, space pervades all over, and wherever space pervades, mind pervades. Mind and space are indivisible. So when you practice meditation, then thoughts might cease for a moment. And when thoughts cease and you meditate, you naturally do not think about material things like earth and rocks. You just naturally abide within a state of emptiness. For example, you're sitting in this building, in this room. So first there is the building, but then you close your eyes and you meditate, and then there is no thought of there is or there isn't a building. For example, when you sit in this room and you visualize yourself as Chinrezig with 11 faces, and first the feeling might arise, 11 faces is a little high, so it might touch the roof, the ceiling of the building. So first that kind of feeling might arise. But then if you continue to meditate, close your eyes, then this whole concept, this sense of there being a ceiling, a building, disappears. There is no thought of its existence or non-existence. And so sometimes when it is difficult to just abide within a state of emptiness, then you can look at your body, focus on your body, and realize how this body doesn't really exist, and how each and every particle and pore of your body is actually completely empty, and that there is no solid thing called the body. So of course, if it's not difficult to meditate, then you don't have to analyze any of that. You just meditate. But then if it's still, there is some solidity, this feeling of solidity in your mind, then you can reflect upon how you are not really this body and how the body is empty. In Dzogchen, there's this term, sangtal, or being like transparency, or being unimpeded. So the mind, the body is just like that. It is unimpededly pervaded by space. Milarepa also said that the mind is all pervasive, so it cannot be locked up in some kind of iron box, because it is all pervasive. And there is no duality even between something that is being locked up and a place where it is being locked up. It all is empty. So reflect in this way, and then when you habituate to that, then later when you engage in meditation practice, you will directly be in a state that is free of doubts. And in such a state, your courage or determination also increases. So wherever space pervades, mind pervades, when you rest in such a state without doubts, then it really becomes an experience of that, of mind pervading wherever space pervades, in a very direct way in this moment. So first you gain an understanding of that, and then you experience it through personal, your own practice. And then through the practice, you become free of doubts.
추주까지 다 사니 추주까지 다 사니 추고 사지 추고도 사지 섬라고 상고요. 대냐도 용가리 생기 직장 맞이 약어마 생고를 가리 때나들이 생고하는 걸 아치든 나빠다고 차대요래. 가가베가 차대요래. 제 치부 동반인 저밤에 선대 남카다 추고죠 이해매 말이 남카 추고죠 각각 말이 데말이 셈도 남카 체면 추고롱도 저 봐야지 남카 델라들이 추적과 닦고요. 세 남카 델리들이 그 탐체 남카로는 마송고요 말이 그 남라고 셈 니게 셈들은 코데가 셈이죠요. 어야. 세리 내력 막도는 코와 차는 내력도는 대추고 되지. 다 셈당 남카 추고서 카가요 말이 동티 고아지 하고들이 고아지 각각 매화라들이 소속을 로근지네들이 이제 봐서는 따오는데는 좀 탐진 저발에 요래 진지 생기 종진지 스종을 여러 남들 생일이 와시네 저는 나는 공상하되면 지종디는 남도 직접 맞이 야잖아 들때지 남지 차 어디 남지 차도 사람이 들때로 하고 듣기래서
So wherever space pervades, mind pervades. Wherever mind pervades, there's Dharmakaya. So it is given those three names: space, mind, Dharmakaya. So what are these three actually? For example, first we think me, that's me. We all think that. For example, you think I'm here, and that's I'm here, and space is there, space is space. But later, when you have realized the view, then you realize that there's actually no delineation between space, mind, and Dharmakaya. So when you gain an experience in that, in meditation, then there's a moment where there's no thought, when there's not a single thought, not a single grasping thought in the mind, and you let everything be as it is, and you look at the mind, then the experience of mind is just like space. So it becomes just like space. There is no separation then between mind and space. That is when you are not grasping at anything whatsoever. And so space is Dharmakaya. Space is indivisible from Dharmakaya. Milarepa had said, when mind and space are not distinct, this is the mastery of Dharmakaya. So what we call the Dharmakaya really, it is space. And there is nothing in the universe and no sentient being that does not fit into space. Everything is encompassed by space. Samsara and nirvana are created by the mind. And when one realizes the nature of that mind, that is the Dharmakaya. And when one doesn't realize it, that is samsara. So mind, space, and Dharmakaya are not separate. So this is what you first need to understand. when there is grasping, one does not hold the actual view. And all faults come from grasping as subject-object duality. So there is the inner grasping mind that connects to the outer grasp at objects, thinking this is me, this is him, and so on. And such thinking is just conceptual thought. So if you do not cling to any conceptual thought and you let them all be, then the experience naturally becomes like that. And then you realize that it actually, if I just let it all be, it just naturally becomes like that.
타마시바도 맹딱바테 하장가를 쳐버리대. 때문에 사지도 빼 다른 보여. 심지도 빼들이 다른 보 사지스 집하나 다른 보라고 차대 요래. 타마시바 집아들 때도 쓰가 있나 요래. 속작 도면 샘지 우리 타마시바 집아들 요래지. 시바랑 그 내록도 듣고 요mer 대외다 뒤들이 냠니 집아들아. 다 타마시바 집아 시바 되게 뭐 철지 뭐 또는 이宽거 뭐 어떻게 참을 찾대요 하고 배나 강아 그 공부해가는 공통통인데 니들 적대는 어디서요 좀 통하고 요래지 랑그 세고대로 또는 취지 자와 마주 샘지 자와 조성 네 사진 탐전은 또 취탐제랑 그 세고 자 조성 따와다지 대성은 이 냠니 진바들 타마를 시바 진바들 다티 명 yap보다 이시지 그 이시대 탐제 동쪽과 이들은 니 예대 요배 예시서 탐제 시배 시서 저랑 그 생고 내려고 또는 그 콘디 탐제 내려고 가서 그요래 내려지니 내려 상계들 콘디 상계들 상비나 랑게들이 말과도 상승선을 생고 내려고 나오자만 디 마음통하는 통솔로 너희들 상제 세운령 통화들 상제 이 마통화들 통화들 상제 다 상제 다들 통성 다 상성 얘들이 생활을 하시라 양당어도 때라 때라랑 이 찹대 책이고 오랑이 찹도 들들이 다 냠니 지바대 찹성 들이 세고되는 거는 사치 딱강 받아고 처음 배나 된거 난 거요래
Then it says, which pervades the bare state of practice. So the bare state of practice is an important term. And what it means is when Gampopa received instructions from Milarepa introduced him to the ordinary naked consciousness. And this was actually, showing him this was actually the greatest kindness. Because without knowing this, it seems that Buddhas and sentient beings are very far apart from each other. But once you recognize the ordinary naked consciousness, you realize that everyone has it. There's no one who doesn't. An animal, a little insect like an ant, everyone has it. It is just that they do not realize the nature of their own consciousness. But when you realize the nature of this ordinary naked consciousness, then you gain an experience, an understanding of how mind pervades wherever space pervades. For example, if you're in a building without any windows, and then there's this little hole that you can peek through, then when you look out, you see the vastness of space outside. So it is just like that when you realize the nature of the mind. It is said, do not cut through the roots of phenomena, or do not inquire into phenomena, but inquire into the mind. And this is how we are introduced to Mahamudra, to the view of Mahamudra. Cut to the root of the mind, inquire into the mind. So this ordinary naked consciousness is given different names. For example, primordial wisdom. Primordial because it has been there since beginningless time, and wisdom because it is all-knowing. And when you realize its nature, you will naturally realize the nature of all, and that is Buddhahood. And so Buddha in Tibetan is Sangye, and Sang also means to awaken from ignorance. And it means to now see what you haven't seen before, to now see that a self does not exist, to now see the essence of the mind is to awaken. So now I have seen it, and that's Sang. And Ge is vast. So then when you see the nature of mind again and again, continuously, then you realize its vastness. It becomes vast like space. So, for example, in the Ganges Mahamudra, this is how we are introduced to the nature of the mind.
Dzogchen 중에 조과 체모지. 체모지는 체모지 니용의 최종이요데. 니용의 최종을. 그런 이는 적정을 배. 남초 대인의 이메베는 체모서. 그 남과 그런 걸 적정이오면 동관이 그런 적정이오면 말이지. 배대서 되게 인바데 하장 삼노당 냠이 제법가는 지마데 삼노당 거래. 냠이 제법가는 지박하래. 라기 시바지 셰든디 남도근 자바케 마체바 코라석터바 남도가리 찰나들이 대파 욕터바 라비르고 셰트바들이 맨 제버디 시바지마디 드디 시바지마데 단냠이 탐지 되어들이 르바지마디 르바지제를 못해 봐서 그 탐지 지제 시바든 너는 철디나 시합 되라더니 남도 조마정에서 마을봐 남도 가래 샤나 되래 저아메가 배를 묻혀타는 통화다 선거래 근데 그때 하장 같지만 묻혀서 타라는 떨잖아 그 자동차만 터서는 타라는 제가 요 말에 들이 다른데 무슨 잠이 빼맞다 마차 빼맞다 마차는 코가 남는 매도 남의 지장 매도 사매 받을 받아 오 코는 내들은 코가를 좀 하면 코가를 좀 하면 이지 매와 선대 답지 다 됐는지 지바디 동만 보여래 가사가니 코는더니 단냠이 지바디 용띠 첨보 용띠 34 대래서 들냠이 지바디 잡대 당연히 잡아서 옥단들이 과다 못들이 깨야
And this term Dzogchen, Chen means great, and it means that it is beyond size. So, which means it is non-dual. If there's a duality, then you might have two different sizes. One is bigger, one is smaller. But if there's no duality, then there's no comparison. There is no different sizes. So therefore, it is great because there's nothing greater than that. There's no greater path, no more supreme path than that. So it is like space, endless, empty. So this is something you have to reflect upon at a point when you're not meditating. When you're actually meditating, you just rest within that state. So this bare state of practice, in this bare state of practice, you abide with clear awareness, unstained by even the slightest grasping at any thought that arises. you're able to abide within the state with stability. And if you abide with stability, then whatever thought arises, you will be able to let it go. It will disintegrate. So this happens when the bare or the naked consciousness is recognized. And that is really the heart of all practice. It is to recognize this bare state, the naked awareness. So this term bare or naked is explained in many different ways. But in brief, it means to sustain awareness that remains untarnished by even the slightest thought or grasping. And when that is sustained, then no matter what arises, you will not connect to that. It is just like when mercury falls onto the ground, mercury stays self-contained. It doesn't mix with the dust. So it becomes just like that. Or you become like a lotus flower that grows from mud, but remains unstained by the mud. So that is similarly for being born in samsara and yet remaining untarnished by the flaws of samsara. And you remain untarnished when there is no grasping at a duality, when you abide within this naked awareness. So this term naked is explained in many different ways, but in brief, to remain within this bare state of practice, that is the root of all good qualities. So, and the bare state of practice is something that you will personally experience. When you abide within a state of practice, then you gain this experience. The first experience that arises is that it really is all-pervasive.
Rangi shokje te sharna nyamje rojek mengda taado ta nyamje rojek mengda ta chogyore rojek shibada kanri rojek de juda menna toma rojek chu rojek toma songse rojek toma rojek kari Hordini, Tomatin, Mantras, Coachetan, Dachi, Tensap. Yeah, they are same with all your heads. Dajin is in a tini, don't call out the door, do you move to one day. The chart, Nabanata, don't call out the secretary, be Mamborat. Yes, I took several, she, that was how did you got as you can't have it, same with zero. Mantras, I did have the Jutse, maybe a Mantras. Zakari Simdodo, Shivadi Chipon, same with Nero Mato, basically. Nero Mato, the same the Lord the Chipari, Pam Manson, Katse Manson, Taya Chujame, Tap to your Nato. That is a kitchen, then Nato, that Tarabango Yora, or Chinik and Tonga Papa did not talk. Tonga Yora, the time. Zopati Jansen. Nam to the say, that's on child. But they don't chick down to you. Oh, till the part of two took the city or Petamje. That is same don't buy you, don't buy you, not all the theatre. The relative, Dar, Rotik, they have you shot in the tar, the Lopakistan. Oh, that Ben the Dzogchen ya galon up the Zawa Chiki ya galon up to them gums. Same with Neruk Dodon Conde touches our chairs. That's it, judge it themselves on. That is, oh, that's the Rochik, that's Yanti Rochik, the Yanti Rochik Karisuma. That's a go Jabakam Sam, and Yanti Roshayo Glorious. Would you take your money? There's Yanti Rochik, make the task.
Then it says, when the mind comes to pervade naturally on its own, it is called the experience of one taste. But such a realization is still very far away. So this one taste, it is said diversity has one taste, and one taste manifests as diversity. So that diversity as one taste is that first there is the great diversity of samsara and nirvana. It is so vast and endless. Samsara is deep and vast, infathomable. But it all arises from the dualistic grasping at self and other. The 6 afflictive emotions lead to birth in the 6 realms of samsara, and in its great varieties, coarse and subtle. And then likewise, the mind creates also the pure lands and the pure forms, which are a natural manifestation of bodhicitta. So going down into samsara, the creation of the mind, it becomes so vast that it becomes inexpressible. But it has a single root, and that is the ignorance that does not realize one's own true nature. So the mind is just like electrical energy. It can be vast and endless, all-pervasive, but there's only one in the end. So this is how our thoughts are. If you look at your mind in any moment, it is said that there are limitless thoughts, just like dust particles. This is something that nowadays science also observes. They see the many movements of the mind. Or in Dzogchen, we speak about one's own thoughts projecting as outer visionary appearances such as rainbow lights and so on. And that actually corresponds precisely with some of the scientific statements. So then we perceive various visionary appearances like light spheres, these bindus, and then we enter into grasping. So this is often how we perceive them. But actually, whatever appears as the manifestation of the empty mind. So that is the one taste. And Tilopa also said that when the leaves and foliage of a tree grow out, or when the root grows dry, then the leaves and the foliage of the tree also will wither. And so similarly, when one realizes the nature of the mind, that severs the root of samsara and nirvana. No matter how vast samsara might be, it all has a single taste. So this is the understanding to be gained. And then when you engage in practice, then sometimes there's this experience of one taste that arises, but it's referred to as an experience because it doesn't last. It is only a temporary experience.
냠디로 직분에서 똑바로 저 아타랭송 냠디는 삼탄을 요 삼탄을 매와 대살때 냠송 또 저는 보절매가 이제 로매가 진짜 뒤잖아 보절매가 내용으로 해야지.
But then such a realization of one taste is still very far away. So an experience is something that is present at times and not present at other times. But a realization is something that is unchanging, it always abides.
常有蛮力晓得目前，常有蛮力晓得，常有蛮力。
哦，你们那等你哪个？你哪个知道？我到东北头呢，做拉手工啥？我做的。哦，当地安那个的，做了什么？那东北人都这叫东北的，北京人个生意当那么出去，这个是送，搞今天罗这的呢，大谁罗这蛮不写送的，是那么个生当，那个生意。那找都是讲的，我们家就听多当铺的，也这个咱们一些的那么个生的，当铺的生意可能就把来的，别了，就把来的，就把人呢，哦，这个呢，我妈弄的，但这是早起我这主要的不怎么做过来的，这个刚刚没被出去嘛的我的，大地嘛的，这个是做坏我的。这个呢，就能经常么的看看嘞，他这里那个这里边呢，哦，大年米前呢，当不上足什么，当不甚至就把嘞，你把人家上足什么讲我嘞，哦，上足什么，就是上街上街上足什么，那个什上足去七八多啊，要么嘞，什么就把嘞，工作上足什么干的这里，就是上街上街上足什么就把嘞。那同样的，你这到罗这的呢，情况一直的了，哪怕到这出去吧，出动嘛，到个嘞，这咱们现在两个星期七八都给没做的呢。那好的一个这个呢，这俺的老板要看看这啥样嘛来的，这是真的中国大马拉的可能，老板出国过完节说他能出国的接送，哪怕的接送，日本的接送这。这是这个的哪怕你这个呢，这社会内容的哪怕你就把这样的，这日本到哦，他就把那些，这个谁肉的们呢，男生他就把男生女的那个生意，就把那些国产的嘞。
So then it says, now in the same way, mingle the essence of your mind with the mind stream of the Guru. So at this point where we experience one taste, now within this state, now we look at the mind of the Guru and my own mind, are they the same or different? So when you meditate, you realize that they are the same. There is one ground, yet two paths. So the basis, the ground of the Guru's mind and your own are one and the same. Just like water is always the same in essence. But then you may add some milk to the water, then it tastes very good, has a perfect flavor. And if you don't add anything, you just have water and it doesn't taste like anything, or it might even become dirty water. So water appears in different ways, but it's still the same. In essence, it's water, but it appears differently due to various conditions. So here, when one engages in practice, one first recognizes that our mind is the same. And then secondly, when I cultivate bodhicitta, the bodhicitta in my mind and the bodhicitta in the mind of all the Buddhas of the three times are also the same. The relative bodhicitta of all the Buddhas of the three times and my own are one and the same. And on the ultimate level, the ultimate bodhicitta is the single basis of mind, which is like space or like pure water. And on that level, the guru's mind and my own mind are also the same. So here you are looking into whether or not there is a difference. And so you find that samsara and nirvana have a single basis. My mind and the guru's mind are not separate, therefore. There's no way we can be separate. The Jigong Master Dhammaratsa had said, recognize the guru to be the Dharmakaya. So before we had mentioned space, Dharmakaya, and mind being one. So this is something we can actually, then this inseparability is something we can understand even in a logical way, and how we really are one. Even though on the outer level there appears to be different forms, but on the inner level of the mind, we are one and the same. So this is the understanding that is gained here.
네 밑에들 다 책 써버려. 근데 또 책 갖다들이 받쳐 강디나 라부터 규칙도 세서 뭐 좀 예민지 곰 잡고 깔비들이 다 찍어봐 소리 거려 곰 잡고 깔는 곰아 잡아서 가서 소리를 옛날에 남미까지 자갈 쳐서 보지 쳐 넘어간 게 타대 장 최에 발라 쳐버면 대비람이 토주당 라드 심리 체미세 뭐 동방이 벌적 람지사와이 벌적 토기 감이 벌적 걔라 투이 적지베 라마 죽게 남절세 이 공지 라마 투이도 바디 책부터 장가다 보죠.
So then the next words are, the paragraph is quite clear. Sustaining the essence, they will become inseparable. So that sustaining the essence is that when you meditate, when you practice, you will gain an experience of being inseparable. But then when you're not practicing, there appears to be a separation. And then just as the rivers of India and the rivers of Tibet are considered to dwell independently in their own places, but are actually comprised of the same water, in the same way, the actual essence of your mind's own nature and the mind stream of your guru are a singular empty essence. They are a singular clear nature, and they are a singular unceasing compassion. Thus, the merging of your mind with your guru's mind is called Dharmakaya Guru Yoga.
토마 잠도 습지 고도 나와 사제베 잠도 어떤 때는 잠도 마시다니 메시다 내지 차음을 배라 강리 습지 삼지 내와다 딩사 다토만 유지 내와다 딩고 삼지 디 셈데 주습지 사제서 저와 차도래 배라 나와 사제베 시동지 그냥 막 그거 말이 드시 송자 그거 말이 밥도 그거 말이 쌈도 땅 것들이 피부가 다 내가 저기서 탑상 못한 거잖아. 걔네들이 내가 먹으면 찍잖아요 말이. 걔네들이 랑라 피부가 다 이제 내가 상무들이 세부 주진 쪽과는 다주 랑그 유를 더 쳤다. 라면 조사 적신지 시작해서 조사 적심도 왜 그래? 줄 사바 재미도 왜 사바 지청 관리도 이제 재미도 왜 대신 말로 사바도 다른 말하면 진짜 좀 야도 곰자 냠이 제거면 너 달라마 두지 찍어야 돼. 찍어 말해. 찍어 뭐래. 쳐이제 찍어야 는 라지 쳐봐가 따따따. 진지 로베 진 되게 따따따. 딱 몸자냐니 이거 같아. 동사 대리스. 오십지 탑지 사제 인송 사제 십지 탑지 냐니 맞이다. 이쪽가 착해요 말이야. 왜는 싹두는 쳐적 봐야 돼. 수가 동투고 말아. 어야. 따뜻한 미는 줄랑 또 빠싸만 내봤지. 잡으리는 풍속도 동나다니 미래. 지체대 죽어야 되나. 그래서 상관없는. 들이다라게 샘도 저기 쳐버려. 샘들 와는 다속 사지에 톱을 열더니 semmi jadi cepat tangan lama tu cepat cakap tangan semmi jago godot tangan ni jago godot jadi sama tu tangan tu tak tu dah ni jago tak cepat istri hakul orang.
So the essence of one's own mind and the mind stream of the guru are a singular essence. So we are the same. So that is when we engage in practice, and then we can become the same. But then in the world there's many different people. For example, there is some who kill others and who abuse others. So due to various conditions that arise, the mind temporarily is in a different state, not quite the same. And so in Buddhism, first we take refuge and we cultivate bodhicitta. And once we have taken the refuge vow, we all have the same prayer, which is, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. So we are not then considering ourselves as most important. And if you have this wish, then you are one with all the Buddhas after 3 times. So this is, in a way, these are the ways of the Buddha Dharma, like kind of the politics of the Buddha Dharma, that do not require an army or weapons or money. But it's a way of thinking, and one thinks about how to bring about the benefit and happiness of others. And there's no one who doesn't want to be happy. So the Buddha Dharma is a method to bring about one's own benefits and the happiness of others. So saying that our mind stream is the same, we have to look at our own mind, look at your own mind. The Guru tells you, cultivate bodhicitta. Have you cultivated bodhicitta? Have you cultivated immeasurable love? Have you cultivated immeasurable compassion? And how much? And then if you look at your mind and find, I have love, then your mind is the same as the Guru's mind. And for that to come about, you have to practice again and again. Then it will become the same, but it isn't the same right now. It is just like water. Water in essence is the same, but then temporarily it appears in different ways due to various conditions. So, and that's the reason why we need to meditate, why we need to engage in practice. So when we are saying that Buddhas and sentient beings are one and the same, that is, if sentient beings do not engage in practice, then they temporarily are not the same. It is just like no one can drink or wants to drink toilet water. So there are some people in the world whose behavior is very bad and who cause a lot of harm towards others. And they are still human beings. But it is important that we tame our own mind in order to ultimately become a Buddha. And then the basis of the mind is the same. So in brief, if you want to become just like the Guru, then you have to engage in practice. If you engage in practice, you become the same.
따진 것만 은이라고 따는 거니 내놨으니 뭐 동바라 예사와 특히 그런 잡아서 대도 막 가시는 뭐 동바 가시는 아주 싸워요. 특히 그걸 잡아야 돼. 그래서 갖고 배를 특히 그걸 잡아야 되니 돈이 동물이 맞도록 되니 요말에 이런한테 최초만 더더니 참말로 요래 돈이 랑지 형제 용요래 되라 등물이 되니 다스는 같이 봐야 돼. 뭐 동바 죽으란지 싸워 특히 그걸 잡아 대에서도 공자들 되니 공부 당보 당고 주는데 따와대 양당야도 공디 되는 남지 되는 거 동바들은 무슨 막 강양 매봐 남가다 더 공양당 것이 요미 딱처럼 또 바탕 채다 잡아 되가면 살랑지 살랑매 하고아디 들이 계공들을 다다른 거 봐. 또 같은 공지 되라고 그 랑지게 된 처음부터는 공자들이 공들 랑지는 처음부터 다들 랑속을 적려고 그래. 다들 응내지 뭐 예소를 랩송 뒤감이 공양당에도 저먹이 저 뭐좀 랑지를 랩서 막고 처음부터는 랩고 그래. 되게 이런 데는 도요래. 뭐다다 무슨 계공을 파시는 뭐 동바양도 라지사와양도 투기권을 잡아 돼 탐지는 데서 아쳐버려 제 가리 여들한 건 양이지는 고니 또는 sentirli Dzogchen den jiktisu gunga sumne teni chung nguje mazab munro saabsu mun chu tamji ga modo roa kare ta samji ri saba tsemi ba 대양 삼바 체미바 마치는 이제 체미바 마치 이제 체미바 마치 다녀 가와가와디 요말베 자 강조치 체미 이제는 사바 체미 조치 보여리 사바 체미는 고 성나 드리티 셈지 탐지 등을 장을 봐대 참 초롱을 요래 대 초롱 셈지 장가 쳤던 상무던 드리다 들린다 벽가마 사이 들들이 잡는 쳐에 들리는 냐면 셈지 탐지 등상 몇개 통고요래 그만 사지게 남치 이식이 쉬운 거래 셈지 대다가 시합군치는 하고 그래 그 사지게 셈지 탐지 세부 주요 세부 주요도나 대 셈지 레랑 동아 탐지 세부 하고 그래 랑 세부랑 하고 배제다 하고 그러더니 내 냠는 거 가면들이 또대다 하고 그러더니 두개 끌어 잡아대 용거는 들이 당보니 셈지 가면 뒤져도 삼바침이 끼치 보여야 돼.
Singular in empty essence, singular in clear nature, and singular in unceasing compassion. So when one actually abides within the nature of the mind, within the view, this is realized. The empty essence of the mind, the natural clarity, and the unceasing or all-pervasive compassion. And so of those three, we can understand the empty essence and the natural clarity, but sometimes it's a little difficult to understand this all-pervasive, unceasing compassion. And it is difficult to really fathom that until one has realized emptiness. But in any case, everyone possesses these qualities to some extent. The nature of this emptiness is compassion. And so when it comes to, from a practical perspective of these three aspects, now first, when one recognizes the natural state, the view, first one recognizes, then one habituates it continuously. And then at times there is a natural experience of the empty essence. So as you habituate to meditation, at times there is no thought, no grasping in the mind, and then this experience naturally becomes like space. So there's no grasping at anything whatsoever, at something existing or non-existing and so on. And that's the empty essence. And the natural clarity is that there is a natural awareness there that knows its empty nature. And so sometimes first we begin with an analytical meditation that is bound to effort. We make an effort to meditate, but then sometimes it just becomes a natural experience. And when it becomes a natural experience, that is when we actually arrive at the fundamental nature of the mind. And this state is effortless. So sometimes we come to this state, and as we continue to meditate, we remain within this state for longer and longer. So first, there is this a kind of an effort-bound meditation, where we first recognize the empty essence and the natural clarity, and the unceasing compassion, which is actually the most important one here. When we practice, when we meditate, we always begin with the mind generation, the motivation of bodhicitta, which is most important. Chittin Sumgön had said, to me, the preliminaries are preliminary practices are more profound than the so-called main part practices. So, but what are the preliminary practices? The preliminary practice to all Dharma is immeasurable love. That has to arise first. When immeasurable love does not arise, then immeasurable compassion cannot arise. And if that does not arise, then there is no way that immeasurable joy and equanimity can arise. So therefore, what's most important first is to cultivate immeasurable love. That is how we begin. So you become aware of the endless suffering of all those sentient beings. And then when you think about the number of those sentient beings in samsara, it just seems endless. There are as many beings as there are stars in the sky, or dust particles in the world, or water drops, and so on. It just becomes endless. But nowadays, it is something that science can actually measure. But it is also something that the Buddha had already realized in the past with his omniscient wisdom. By realizing his own mind, he realized that the vast appearance of sentient beings is are the karmic visions arising from their own mind. So he realized that it is all the mind, and therefore he saw the vastness of sentient beings. And so this is most important when it comes to our practice, the all-pervasive compassion. And so in order for compassion to become unceasing and all-pervading, first the mind generation of bodhicitta is most important, and for that to cultivate immeasurable love continuously is most important.
Tela togi jingli ba lama chukwe namjor se o da lama chukwe namjor no te se pen rong ba damana jaki somebody lama chukor ko var shi nimi mu pusam so se rangi ge teni rangi me to chen semti chukwe ta de tawanga ne una teni de kaka mu che go ma me to go ma lama chukwe ba ha ko na teni rangi sem de rangi derchik nibo chi ba de gabo be so jo de derchik nibo te no ma rin chi jin ge chi tabte da ma so de jo derchik nibo te 가사칸서 대체적으로 좋아요. 차송 대타지 하고는 그래도 주사 좀 sembe 달라마 랑신 랑게 생그 낭이 소자에 손지 빼라마 사가요. 올라가게 신이 탐제래. 이 탐제가 문이 적들라마지 적들 tukare song dignity, get the song long college, talk to that, Rangi, chicken water, Lama, Yemi Bazi. The taking back a song, you take a ban, Dr. Lama, Tita Shiki by Yemi, only Lama to be shut up. The W. Doman and also the Saji Jimbo Shirapti. Shirapti Parado, Shirapkari, Rangero Rangatopa, 3 days or Tamini Lamaran, Yemi, and the Range, Shirap the rate, the Shirap the Keshi on my Range. The Lama the logo, the Chukatamila, the Lama Koran Datong, Bema, and Koran Datong mate, Keshi on my, wrong on my. They really, oh, Talama Dasal to talk what go on my Rangi Sena, Timama, Tony, just on the day and the Lama Junche, maybe you are the potato call, Lama Chukan, George said, it's a with the look to go to the Lama don't touch what he does, and the Lama each.
Thus, the merging of your mind with your guru's mind is called Dharmakaya Guru Yoga. The Trigu Master Dhammarata had said that understand the guru to be the Dharmakaya. This is the perfect non-dual devotion. So when you rest within the Dharmakaya, within the view or the natural state of the mind, there is no need to make a deliberate effort to cultivate devotion. When you realize that the guru is the Dharmakaya, there it becomes effortless. So your own Buddha nature. With regard to that, Gampopa had said, the cause is Buddha nature, the support is the precious human body, the condition is the spiritual teacher, and the method are the teacher's instructions. Also elsewhere it is said then Buddha nature pervades all sentient beings. So the guru that appears to you is referred to as the external illustrative guru, the spiritual teacher, the lamas, and so on. And that guru's form is the Nirmanakaya, the speech is the Sambhogakaya, and the mind is the Dharmakaya. And through the guru you realize that the essence of your own mindfulness is indivisible from the guru's mind. In the Nyingma teachings, it says through the condition of faith and devotion, you recognize that the actual absolute guru is your own mindfulness. So mindfulness is the ultimate guru. Also, when we take the refuge vow, it says, I take refuge in wisdom, the heart essence of the Buddha. So the perfection of wisdom. The perfection of wisdom is the realization of the natural state of mind. So that is the actual guru that is indivisible from your own mind, this perfection of wisdom. And wisdom is beyond birth and death. So this is the nature of the Guru's Dharmakaya and also the Sambhogakaya. It transcends birth and death, and it is beyond coming and going. So then when you understand that, there is no need to have any doubts as to whether or not the Guru is actually present. Just sustain a state of non-distraction and cultivate the union of emptiness and compassion, sustain that continuously, and that itself is the actual Guru. So when you understand that the actual Guru is the Dharmakaya, and that means the ultimate guru that you have confidence or trust in is the continuous sustaining of the nature of mind.
Or mani me hong, or mani me hong, or mani me hong. I better sangha thank you.
We will now take a 30-minute break and we will be right back. Thank you very much.